This is the only guide you guys will ever need to correctly install a Yoke steering wheel in your Tesla Model 3 or Y. After scavenging the internet, I realized there isn't a solid guide out yet, which is why I created this one, so let's get into it. Here are all the tools you guys will need for this installation. You can get away without using the 4-piece precision pick set, but it was very useful if you're trying to transfer your airbag from your original steering wheel to the Yoke. All these tools will be linked in the description, so don't worry about pausing the video, but you will also need a T6, T10, and T25 screwdriver bit. Afterwards, you guys are going to go ahead and pop the front open. Make sure you do also adjust the steering wheel to a position that's comfortable for the installation, because after we disconnect the 12 volt, you won't be able to adjust it anymore. Make sure you power off your screen. Then you're going to go to your front and take this top panel off. It's connected only with clips, so it is very easy to take off. Just go ahead and be gentle with all the parts during this installation, because you don't want to break any clips off and then have to end up replacing them. As always, if you guys do appreciate this installation guide, please leave a like down below, because I spent countless hours editing this video for you guys. After you take the top panel, it should look something like this, and you're going to grab your 10mm socket to unscrew these two bolts holding the air filter in place. Afterwards, you guys are going to want to go ahead and grab the ratchet and the 6-inch extension bar, and then go ahead and put the 10mm socket in that, and you should be able to take both of those screws out that are holding the air filter in place. Now, in order to take the air filter out, you're just going to pull up on it. There might be a few parts that are kind of in the way, like where the windshield wiper fluid goes in. You might have to take the cap off of that, especially on the Model Y, because it is kind of hard to take out with that in the way. After you manage to take the big air filter out, it should look something like this, and you can go ahead and just place that to the side, and we now have full access to the 12-volt battery, which we will be disconnecting. At this point, I decided to throw some gloves on because it will get a little bit dirty, but you're going to unclip that green clip and then push down on the top, pulling it to the side, and then lifting it up to disconnect the 12 volt. You also want to make sure to place that little connector to the side just so it doesn't have any contact to it. Now you should see a message on the screen saying the low voltage battery was disconnected. That is a good sign, and we're going to go ahead and take the airbag out now. Keep in mind that since the battery is disconnected, it cannot pop in your face. Now, taking this out is a little complicated, so I put an image here on the screen showing you guys where you're going to be pushing against to take that airbag out. So you kind of have to get a feel for it. Once you feel that metal clip, you can push against it, allowing the airbag to release. You will have to do this on both sides, and just be very slow with this process because you're not in a rush. Also, don't pull the airbag out once it is disconnected, because you're going to need your nose pliers to go ahead and disengage that clip right here. So there's one on the top and bottom, and you can pull that out, allowing the airbag to completely release. At this point, your steering wheel should look something like this. So we're going to grab the 18-inch breaker bar with the 6-inch extension bar and the 10mm Hexbit socket to go ahead and take that main screw out. Keep in mind that your steering wheel is torqued into place with around 59 pounds of torque, so you will have to use your knees to keep the steering wheel in place when you're taking this main bolt out of it. Once you take that main bolt out, we can go ahead and disconnect the clip that's directly connected to the steering wheel using those nose pliers, and that does come out fairly easy, and you will receive another message on the screen regarding the steering wheel. At this point, you could take the steering wheel out, it's not too hard, and then we're going to go ahead and start transferring over the components from the original steering wheel to the yoke. Now we're going to use a flathead screwdriver to disconnect these black clips on the back part of the steering wheel, and then there's two connectors holding this component in place. Now you can go ahead and grab a T25 screw bit to unscrew 4 screws that are holding a lot of these components in place. Make sure you guys do not lose these screws because we will need them later on. And so after you're done unscrewing all of these screws, you can go ahead and take the main part of the steering wheel out. Just gently nudge it out of place and it should come out just like this. Now that the main component is out, we're going to disconnect it from the heating element, which is the only thing holding it in place right now. So that is kind of buried away into the bottom part, and you can disconnect it like that, giving you free access to the main components. At this point, you're going to grab a T6 to go ahead and unscrew those smaller screws holding these components in place. And so all of these components on the steering wheel is what allows you to use a lot of the most essential functions in your Tesla, including the voice control and being able to change things like the temperature, acceleration mode, and all that stuff that you guys are used to. Now, I've seen videos where people try to use their own components instead of the ones that was already in their Tesla, and it ends up not working, which is the main reason why I'm doing it this way. I grabbed a T10 right here, and I'm showing you guys all the screws you're going to be taking out at this point. So make sure you are keeping track of these screws because you will need some of them later on. Now, this entire process isn't necessarily hard, but it is tedious. So make sure you're taking time with these steps. And if you have to go back into the video to rewatch something, definitely do it because you don't want to install this incorrectly and then end up having to take your steering wheel out again. Right here, you guys can see that I disconnected one of the components and went ahead and moved it around that harness just to reconnect it again to keep track of where it was originally. Afterwards, you guys should have something that looks like this, and you're almost there. Right here, you guys can see there are some clips you are going to have to disengage to take out the main components. I used a little pick that I had, which came in handy for this step because the flathead wasn't working super well. So once you disconnect those clips, it should come right out, and you can go ahead and just hold on to these parts in case you ever need to use them again in the future. Now that these components are out, we are almost there towards having a completely installed yoke steering wheel. This little plastic part on top, you can go ahead and move to the side because we won't need that for the installation. Now you can grab your yoke steering wheel, and if you have a carbon one, make sure you're gently nudging it out of place. But I got mine from a company called TV Bex. They have a lot of different Tesla accessories on their site, including this yoke steering wheel that they sent to me to go ahead and review for you guys and make this installation video. So if you guys want to pick one up from them, you can use code DrewV20 for 20% off your order. Now, once you release that harness from your yoke steering wheel, we can go ahead and start moving those internal components over. Right here is the heating element that will connect in. And so when you're moving these components over, you do want to make sure that everything is flush in place and that there are no gaps. So definitely take your time with this process because you want to be very thorough and make sure that everything is completely flush together. Now, the heating element right here isn't going to be connected yet because you're going to grab a T6 to go ahead and screw those smaller screws into place. Make sure you guys are definitely taking your time with this process, and I would recommend screwing the screws in slightly before tightening everything just to make sure it's super flush and secured. After you guys are done screwing in these smaller screws, you're going to grab a T10 and go ahead and do the same thing with the bigger ones. Hopefully you guys found it helpful that I did show every single part of this process, because I know when I was looking for YouTube videos, there just wasn't enough information or visuals on every single part. So after you're done with that, you should have everything flush into place, and you can even kind of test it out by rolling your thumb up and down. Now we can go ahead and put this harness into the actual yoke steering wheel so you can connect the heating element right there. And you're going to go ahead and just start pushing down firmly all around to make sure everything is completely flush in place. So take your time with this process and don't stop until you're completely satisfied with the way it looks. And now you can go ahead and grab a T25 to screw the largest screws holding this harness into place. Once you're done screwing all of these screws into place, you're going to go ahead and grab a metal piece from your original steering wheel to move over into the yoke. So you can just pull that out. It comes out fairly easy, but keep in mind the step is very crucial. Otherwise, your airbag will not clip into place when you're trying to install it. So definitely do not forget this step, because when I was doing it, I ended up forgetting. So I had to redo everything. Go ahead and push that heating element clip all the way to the bottom of the steering wheel. And then you'll grab this other component that clips into place on the steering wheel. So make sure those clips are visible from the back and are completely against the steering wheel. Otherwise, you will have issues. Then you can go ahead and clip these little things into that component, which allows you to use your buttons and your horn. Now, this next step is definitely not for everyone. So if you want to switch your airbag out, you're going to need to go ahead and destroy the original one, and you're not going to be able to ever use this again. So just keep that in mind before you even attempt this, because you still can use the original airbag with your yoke steering wheel. The only difference is mine came with the carbon logo on it, so I wanted to switch the airbag out. So I went ahead and basically bent a lot of the plastic that was holding these clips in place, and then with an immense amount of force, I pulled this airbag directly out. So this took me around an hour and a half to do, and this was definitely the hardest part of the process. You guys can see how destroyed that original unit is. I didn't damage the actual airbag in any way, it's just the other component that's holding it in place. So right here you guys can see the airbag, which I did not damage any of the clips of, and you definitely don't want to do that because it could be a huge safety issue. So you can grab your other component to go ahead and slide the airbag into place. You will have to use some force to push it into place, so make sure you take your time with this and you're allowing all those clips to fall into place, otherwise it could be a huge safety issue. So take your time with this process, and once you're finally done with it, you should have something that looks like this with that carbon logo on there. So we're ready to finally install the yoke. Now in order to install the yoke, you are going to want to check the alignment. So mine was slightly towards the left, and that's only because of the way I parked my car before I took the steering wheel off, which lets me know that my yoke is also going to lean towards the left when I push it in place. Once you go ahead and finish that, I would actually recommend screwing that main screw that holds your steering wheel in place first before putting that clip in, just in case your yoke fell off for any reason, you wouldn't risk damaging that clip. And so once you hand tighten that as much as you can, grab your ratchet with your 6-inch extension bar to tighten that as much as you can before we go ahead and move on to the 18-inch breaker bar to torque it in place. So you are going to have to use a lot of force, and make sure you use at least 59 pounds of force to torque it in place, because that is the exact spec for the Model 3 and Y, but it could be a huge safety risk if you don't torque it, so make sure you do that. And then you can go ahead and grab your airbag and clip that into place. Now all you have to do is line up the airbag module and click that into place. You should also hear the horn go off, so make sure you're somewhere quiet, but I ended up forgetting one of my own steps, so it didn't work. Now I promise if you guys follow all of my steps, you will have a completely functioning yoke steering wheel. I personally had to redo it, but my horn did end up working and I had no issues with anything afterwards. And you guys can see just how beautiful this carbon yoke is. It's honestly pretty easy to drive with. It wasn't a huge change, and I'm super glad to be able to have some real carbon fiber on my steering wheel. Now hopefully you guys found this video helpful and you were able to install your yoke steering wheel. So if you were able to, leave a like down below and consider subscribing. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.